You don't want to do it. It's a criminal investigation. It doesn't have.
We have a policy if they're,
Right.
we've done that
Do it.
before. He's in it, he's willing to look. He goes out for,
But yeah, I guess we'll talk about it.
I'll look
tomorrow.
at that.
Yeah, look at the email and we'll talk about it tomorrow. Yeah.
That's one of the questions I've always had. Not to discuss it tonight.
We're on? Okay,
I think we're on.
very good.
Here. Can I borrow your hammer?
You make all them goat herders want to learn it.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will call this meeting to order, and if we will all please stand for Father Meinrad Miller, please.
We thank you, loving God, for all of your blessings upon us this day. Bless the city commissioners, bless our officials and all of our citizens, that we might all work together for your glory and honor. We make these prayers in your powerful name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
That'll be mine.
As we do not have any proclamations, we will ask our city clerk, Tina Fitzpatrick, to please call the roll.
Mayor Young,
Present.
Vice Mayor Wilcox,
Here.
Commissioner Greenlee,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy,
Here.
Commissioner Slattery.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will open for our public forum. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items that are not on the agenda may do so at this time when called upon by the mayor. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Again, speakers are limited to 3 minutes and should give their name and address when addressing the commission. Any presentation is for information purposes only. And I will open the public forum. Okay, seeing as though we do not have anyone, I am closing the public forum. At this time, we will ask our city manager, Amy Finch, to please present the consent agenda.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Your consent agenda this afternoon includes approval of the minutes of the March 5th, 2024 City Commission meeting, John Kurth's Indigent Defense Services contract renewal, and authorization for city staff to pay Midwest Injection, Inc. $83,800 for the annual removal of sludge from the wastewater treatment plant.
All right, do we have any questions for Amy regarding items on the consent agenda?
I had one.
Yes, Commissioner.
I was wondering, did we try to negotiate on this deal with that? See, the contract called for $41,900.
I think that's for each basin. Clinton, is that correct? Yes. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. McNamara.
Quizzing Clinton about it earlier. It sounded to me like we had a contract for $41,900, and we've doubled it. I was just wondering why we didn't negotiate a little bit less on the second half.
I do not have a detailed answer for that, other than to say, as we talked previously, the possibility of maybe pushing this off to another meeting so that we could look into that a little bit deeper. However, I just called the wastewater, actually the water and wastewater plant manager, and he said that we are full, and he would not recommend pushing or tabling this particular one. However, once we get through this one, maybe that's something that we can look at and see how they figure the pricing. It's based on a volume, but I understand what you're saying, that it seems like they probably factor mobilization into that unit price, and would it not be more efficient for them to come? Wouldn't we get a better price?
Yeah.
I don't know that, but that's something we can definitely look into. But at this time, I very much recommend not postponing.
I mean, I just think that, he's got a mobilization cost to come. He drives that tractor from Iowa down here. Drives it down the road, tank and all this stuff. He's got to move all his trucks down there and everything. His bid was $41,900 to do what's basically half of what we wanted to do. I just think we missed a whole deal there. Appreciate it.
So the work will actually take place within 30 days of the contract?
That is the plan as far as I know.
And, oh, go ahead.
But he won't have a place to put it if it's too long. That's the problem. Okay.
All right. And Clinton, you said that you very much do not want us to postpone this. It would be better to move forward.
Our sludge holding tanks are at their capacity.
Okay,
We'd have a bit of an issue there.
okay. All right. Good. Any other questions?
I just have one real simple one on the John Kurth Indigent Defense Services contract.
Yes, Commissioner.
Is there we pay him so much money a month, not out of line, I don't believe. But how many cases does he get, say, in a year? And what if it's multiple ones more than he anticipates? Does he have capacity to bill us for extra?
I don't think we have that provision in the contract, but Bob, do you want to add
It's
to
a
that?
flat monthly fee. He might get
Okay,
6.
okay.
We have 2 attorneys.
Yeah.
Who's the other one? Oh, yeah.
I was just curious how much we were paying per,
County used to do that 20 year.
well, I mean, if he's, 1 month, if he has 3, and then in the month of August, he has 22, and he's going to work with that, within that parameter. That's all I wanted.
Tell the police to arrest less people.
Well, less indigents.
Yes, less indigents.
Arrest people with money.
Yeah, we hire the police, and then we hire the defense attorney, and we hire the judge,
We should clarify that's a joke.
Yes, because we
For
want
the
an
record.
orderly city.
Okay.
Okay.
We do.
I feel better about saying that. All right.
Okay, it's been moved that we accept the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will move to our new business, and I will open a public hearing regarding proposed property tax exemption for MGPI Processing, Inc. And we will open the public hearing at 4:37. Okay, public hearing is open. Do we have anyone here that is interested in speaking on behalf of the property tax exemption for MGPI Processing, Inc.? Yes, sir.
I'm Jeff Rogers. I don't know if I've met all of you before. I've kind of taken over. I had tax and insurance from MGP. I know a lot of you work with Dave Rendham. I do a lot of what Dave used to do. So really what we're asking for here is a little bit of a clerical change, right? If you look at this, we had had this resolution passed a couple of years ago before we built the Proterra plan. I think everybody realized that we made a typo on there and we listed the corporate address instead of the actual address of the building. And so we're really just asking for that typo to be cleaned up and we pass the resolution. That being said, I did want to address, I know there's been questions about MGP and obviously there's been some painful changes. I did think it would be helpful if you guys understand that this is really, we're trying really hard to keep people employed. Building this plant saved probably 22 jobs. We've got another plant that we're looking to build to do some wastewater. That's another 6 to 8. I know Amy and I had talked about, do we want to ask for another property tax? And I think we've decided no, that we're going to just take this and say, thank you for the help. But, I do want to address that, really without this, what happened would have been a lot worse. So just wanted to let everybody know that. And I'm happy to take questions if you guys have any.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I guess from my and I'm sure I don't want to speak on behalf of all of the commissioners here, but I know for me, economic security is very important, obviously, to the city. MGP is a huge portion of our city's economic viability. So do you foresee any other cuts like we saw previously?
So actually, what we did, and I think it's a really fair question. I'm a fairly informed person. So what we did is we started with the number, if we would have shut the distillery down, we wouldn't have been able to pro. The other plant that's out there, we're proposing to buy. We said, how many would that be? That number was substantially higher, and again, there's, SEC recorded statements, so I don't want to contradict. That number would have been substantial. And so then we went through and we whittled that number down and down and down. And so we've committed, I think it was roughly $17 million to build the Proterra plant, looking at maybe another $8 million to build a biofuel plant. So we're looking at, do those to another $25 million of investment here in Atchison, keep that plant up and running, the ingredients plant. That plant is doing well. It's consistently having record performances. The newer plant, which is don't see in that. As to answer the question of why did the distillery need to shut down, there was a kind of two things that happened. So when COVID hit, we saw actually a really big spike in the for there. What that did is it actually forced a lot of the ethanol producers or the plants got into the game. We were losing money every month. Pretty substantial. Became a point of could we retrofit that older plant to keep up with the new ethanol plant? Just didn't think. But to answer your question, I looked at I get the wage reports for. Really weren't down too bad. I mean, typically in Atchison, we've seen 215 people. We were still in the 190s. So it really hasn't been as bad as because of all of this investment.
And we appreciate the investment because, like I said, MGP is such an integral part of our community, and we appreciate all that you do for us. With that being said, you said that this MGPI processing tax exemption, that will help you. Is there anything else that would help?
I mean, eventually we're going to look at a biofuel plant. You guys want to be on a biofuel plant? Back for. But, I mean, we're built, so this is kind of just a clerical cleanup. We're built. Those employees are there. So I think right now we're happy to be here. I've been at MGP since 2016 for Natchez. Get it? So yeah, no, but I think we're in good shape. We want to be here, and that we want to kind of give some assurance that we're looking to go away. It's actually we're putting money in.
Excellent. Any other questions? Yes.
So basically, the only thing that we're really doing at this particular moment is changing the clerical error.
From 100 Commercial Street to 1145.
Okay, and I mean, so there's no change in taxing authorities by us or taxes that you guys are going to pay?
No.
And so it's basically just a clerical cleanup.
I mean, it's just, once we do that, we would get a property tax abatement years on.
Yeah.
Technically, we've got to take this to the Board of Tax. The attorney that had done the draft.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay.
We just thank you guys too, and we thank you for being a good community. Those of us who have been here a long time with MGP, very sorry.
Well, but we appreciate all that you do for our city and for our citizens and the economic viability that you bring to Atchison. Thank you. Okay, at this time, are there any other persons wishing to address this public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 4:44 PM. And with that, we will go on to item number 2 in new business, and that is resolution number 3383, property tax exemption to be granted to MGPI Processing, Inc. And we've already had that presented, so are we ready for a motion to adopt resolution number 3383?
Make such
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we will approve resolution number 3383. Tina, if you could please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Wilcox,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenlee,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
yes.
Commissioner Slattery,
Yes.
Mayor Young.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we will move to item number 3, ordinance number 6707, exempting certain property in the city from ad valorem taxation for economic development purposes and repealing ordinance number 6678. And this will be presented by Rogers, Director of Tax and Insurance, MGP Ingredients.
I
Did we
think,
already
Madam
do
Mayor,
that?
this would be part of that same proceeding.
Okay, all right.
Same issue, so I think unless Mr. Rogers has anything else to add, you're
Mm-hmm.
free to go ahead.
Okay, all right, so I will entertain a motion to repeal the ordinance.
I'll move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Tina, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Greenlee,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Slattery,
Yes.
Mayor Young,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilcox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to item number 4, 920 North 4th Street rezone request presented by Phil Burke, our zoning officer.
Oh, good afternoon, Commissioners. What you've got before you on item number 4 was a request for a rezone from single family to R2. And probably a month ago with this planning commission for rezone. And advisory committee, we have to bring it to you. Approval of
Okay, all right. At this juncture, is there anyone who would like to speak on behalf of this?
My name's Craig Ostertag. North Fifth. The same. Not zoning. Property north of it. I think is it. So that's all I got.
Okay. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Zoning, I know one of the questions that comes up is this spot zoning. And I hate that terminology myself, but are there other options other than zoning R2, like unconditional, conditional use, or something along that line? Is that a possibility? He has built some nice stuff, and we should be applauding this guy instead of making it harder. And I understand the people that want R1. I grew up in a duplex, so it's going to be pretty hard to teach me that R2 is a bad situation. I just don't know if conditional use would work. Would that work, Quentin? I mean,
Phil, am I correct that the conditional use would only apply to the current property owner and would not, if that property were sold, it doesn't follow the property, is that correct?
additional uses typically follow the.
Okay, so that would be one challenge if,
what was it?
If the conditional use was granted for Mr. Ostertag and that property ever changed hands later, the conditional use doesn't follow that, it stays with the owner. So the new owner would have to reapply, and I don't know what would happen if it wasn't granted. You'd have a non-conforming property.
You sure that works that way?
I'm
Bob, is that
pretty
the way it
sure.
works?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
There's methodology in regard to, so conditional use permit. Method on the books to make. Like I said,
The property that's directly north of the property that we're talking about has historically been duplex my whole life. And I just don't know why it would be R1 if it's been a duplex my whole life. I don't know why this can be,
One right next to it, isn't
two families. It's got two separate structures.
it? Yeah.
I think the one is set up as a duplex on the very corner, I think.
on the corner.
Yeah.
Yes.
One on the corner.
Okay, so it's three.
Okay, and so you can see the confusing element that we are dealing with here. We need people to be building new structures in old parts of town, and that's we have somebody that wants to do it, and we're throwing up blockades, and I just didn't. And then unless I'm completely out of my mindset, but I applaud you.
You talked me into it.
Huh?
You talked me into it.
Okay, well, I don't have to convince you.
Where we at, Bob, on this thing? Where we at on it? If we grant this this zoning change, is the city subject to any liability down the road? Because
Get hit with this. I wish I would have had a little time to research it, but I think everything's going to
Bob,
depend on the reasonable.
Will you?
Everything's going to depend on the reasonableness of the ordinance and whether it conforms. But generally, the cities are left to do what they want.
And in this situation, Phil, was the Planning Commission, was that a unanimous?
Yes.
It was unanimous. Okay, all right.
Didn't,
I'm a little confused on the timing. So it went to the planning commission, and then didn't we act on it?
Not this
no,
one. Not this one.
not
This is
this
on Fourth
one.
Street.
Fifth Street.
Oh, the Fifth Street.
Yeah.
Fifth
We're
Street.
over on Fourth Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mayor and
Yes.
commissioners, if you did choose to override the planning commission's recommendation, it would take 4 affirmative votes from the commission to override the planning commission recommendation to you.
Thank you for that clarification, Amy. So,
I'm just
Any other
concerned about
questions?
if we get in some liability as a city for doing spot zoning. And I'd like Robert to give us a definitive
But
answer.
we would have to do some research.
Okay. We can do that.
Zoning all
Yeah. Well, that's what I don't understand.
Is spot zoning illegal?
that was nothing in our ordinance. Statute about it, it has to be case law.
Look at the map. And you can draw your own conclusion. Whether
Tell
or
us
not-
what is.
What is the conclusion? I don't,
Look at the planned district that is Old Armory. I mean, you might say that spot zoning is not a best practice, but there are examples of it all over. That's my opinion. Lawyer, not even a classically trained city planner by any means, but there are examples of it everywhere.
well, I'm all for
However,
this.
to represent what the planning commission's intentions are, they spend a fair amount of time, and any of them that are watching this, because they spend a fair amount of time saying the word spot zoning, and it's always in a negative. So folks that are on that board, and I think even other staff members, perceive that it's not a positive thing to do. The whole intent of zoning, to play that thought out, is that you don't want a hog farm next to where somebody's living. That's the reason we even have zoning to begin with, is because of that problem 100 years ago. And you
This
fast
thing could be
forward it
hog
now,
farms.
and we separate everything into all these different categories. So I'm trying to be fair to both perspectives there. I think there are a lot of examples of it here. Is it ideal? No. Is it illegal? Not seeing anything that would suggest that it's illegal, unless we're doing a bunch of other things, other places that are illegal. To me, it's a policy question, and you are the policy board.
Well, can we designate, like, there's obvious a need for this extra housing around the college area?
Well, sure. I mean,
Don't some of those college towns have different ordinances around the college area?
yeah, certainly.
Well,
I
let's
mean, you,
do that kind of stuff.
to do what you're describing would require, a substantial rezoning of an entire neighborhood. And just from my personal experience, I can tell you how that kind of thing would go. When Greg submitted this application at the Planning Commission, a packed house, because for whatever reason, people in this country seem to think that if you have a duplex, it means renters, and renters mean that your life's going to be ruined. I don't say that disparaging to them, because everybody's fine with it. Everybody agrees we need more housing. They just don't want it next to them. That's always the case. It's just a not in my backyard NIMBYism. There's entire books written about it. But I can tell you we'd have to have the meeting at the event center if you wanted to rezone an entire neighborhood to R2, because the neighbors are against it, and that much is very clear. And I think that's fair to Craig and to the neighbors to characterize it as.
So you're not, I'm sorry.
No, go
You're
ahead.
not intending to put a shovel in the ground anytime in the very near future, even if this is passed. So I don't think there's any urgency to make a decision. I'm sort of mixed, because I don't want to counter what the Planning Commission, whatever time and energy they put into it. I have some concerns about the residents who are opposed to it, and how adamantly opposed to it they are. But at the same time, I'm confident that whatever Craig would build there is much better than what's to the north of it.
Yeah,
Great.
I agree with that.
And I don't know how it lessens the value of the neighborhood to put up a better structure than what has been there for 75, 85, 95 years, and is not in great repair, my recall. I'll have to go by and look at it again. This sort of came up.
Why don't we give Mr. Campbell a little time to research this for us? That's the only concern I got is that we don't want to put the city in a liability situation.
Well,
the
that's
only
not my
concern.
only concern.
You're concerned about the other residents too.
Yeah.
Well, but
As if I would be if it was my home and somebody wanted to build something next to me, I'd like to have some input into what that would be. And I don't agree with all the reasoning behind some of the residents. Parking, I think, seems to be a critical thing. Safety is another issue. Children at play is an issue. I don't know that having more than one family in a home, we got families with 12 kids.
Yeah.
Should we restrict how many children they can have so that we can determine how many cars they can have?
Well, he's got provisions there for parking behind it.
So,
My concern also, I agree with you, Commissioner Wilcox, and also Commissioner Murphy and Commissioner Slattery. My concern also, though, is that we have a planning commission that had a unanimous vote. And so I'm also concerned that we're overturning something that was unanimous with the commission. So that's a concern of mine. At this point, my question is, what would happen if we were to table this particular item? Is there a time constraint?
No, I don't think so. There were
Okay.
no,
it's been an empty lot for how long? Long
7
time?
years, probably.
I would have guessed longer, but I'll defer to your.
Probably longer.
the time has expired for a protest petition to be filed
Okay.
on this particular one. I would think you may table it and ask the city attorney to get information.
I have kind of a open-ended question, but what is different about this property than the property that we did have rezoned for him that it's a block away.
Oh, there was already an existing building to the north that was multifamily,
That's
is
the,
that
that's
correct?
the distinction. To represent what the planning commission said, that one was adjacent to an existing R2, and so you're incrementally growing an R2 district. In this case, you're making a little bit of a leap spatially.
What's directly north is there's a small house there directly north.
Of this property,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. I don't have that in my mind.
Isn't there
Maybe
a
Phil would.
small house?
There's a small house and a duplex, and I think it's on the same piece of property.
There's only one address, even though there's 3 addresses.
Okay, so I'm having a hard time figuring out how this could be detrimental to the neighborhood in any fashion, other than we have a
You
planning.
had somebody who wants to comment on that, so.
Yep. Behind you, sir.
Yeah, so I live across the street. I live at 923 North 4th Street. My name is Matthew Muller. I work and teach at Bennington College, and I've been kind of helping the neighbors communicate in opposition to rezoning in the neighborhood. And so to the question, specific question of like, how would this be negative to the neighborhood? I think some of them has already been listed off. Some of the concerns the neighbors have of parking, of the increased traffic in an area that's an R1 area, and then we have the 2 duplexes on 5th, right? It can hold 10, is that right? Each one is allowed to hold 10. And so then another one on 4th will hold 10, and so you've gone from 15 residents to 30 residents. If, I believe it's Regan next door, he's got a lot of space. If he asks to then rezone, and he has a lot large enough, he could probably split it into 2 lots and have 2 duplexes built there. So now we have 30 people living on that one block, right, instead of 10 or 15, right? So that's a huge number of increase in the population density of that area. With population density, you would also have traffic issues. And it is a walking area. College students, professors, myself, right? And kids who walk from blocks away to go to St. Benedict's Elementary School now have more traffic to deal with. But the city's growing, the college is growing. I understand it's a desirable area. So, but I also think that it makes the area less desirable for home buyers, home owners who want to live in that area, this historic district of town, and invest in their homes and raise families there and invest in that community. Renters don't tend to have the same investment in the properties as homeowners do. And landlords do their best, I think, but when you have a lot of properties, are they there to keep that property up, or does it look good for the first few years and then it's just maintain, not increase, right? So those are some of my concerns, that approving this because we think nicely of the owner, of the developer, we think that he's a good person and he's been good for the community, so we'll do him a favor, doesn't then give good reason for saying no to the next request from a good neighbor for doing a development of duplexes or more. And then this area that was historic, single-family residential area becomes a place that is not that character anymore, right? To the question of, we have families with 12 people, and the Blossers live behind me, right? And I think they have 10 or 11 children, and there's a lot of people living there. But those are people, again, family who invest in that property. And if it's a car thing, right, their family has 2 cars, not 12 cars, right, where our renters come, and especially with the renters that I'm anticipating living there, they will each bring their car, right? They're college students, right? They're going to bring their car. If they're not college students, they may not be a family, and they may, everyone will have a car, right? It's a very different, we all know, I think it's the numbers, you can play with the numbers, but I think it's very clear that a group of 10 people who are not related living in the same place is different than 10-person family living in a place, although the noise is probably different kind of noise, but it's loud, right, with that many kids. So that's some of the major concerns from the neighborhood, is that what will this do to this area that is a desirable place, right? And it seems to me there's many places to develop around town. I'm not in the development business, so I can't speak to that for sure. But do we want to change the character of this historic component of town that people desire to live in for this, I think, momentary benefit?
How is the congestion right now? How does that affect your living, the children there at this point now?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we make sure they don't go out in the street, that's for sure. I mean, well, across the street from me was a year ago, a little over a year ago now, right? The car that overturned, right? People come flying down that street. They seem like to test their shocks and suspension going down 4th Street off of Unity, right? It's boom, boom, boom. So, I mean, it's not as bad as it could be, right? But I think it's an issue. People are coming through there. We direct our kids off of Unity Street when we're going to school, just because that between all the cars parked there and all the cars whipping up and down Unity Street now, it's a busy place, especially during the academic year, right, when the students are there. So
You're kind of caught in a funny place here because the college is the one that's causing this demand for this.
right, it's good business, good for good for me. I have job security, right? The more students we
The
get,
colleges, but they need housing close to the college.
I know.
They
Yeah,
don't want to live clear out in the country. They want to live up there close to it.
sure.
Looks to me like rezoning this thing close to the college where they could put multiple things. You got dormitories right across the street the other way,
Getting
a
closer.
bunch of people living.
Yeah, and the dormitories, right, which is like on 2nd Street there. And yeah, it's a challenge for the college. And I think that's kind of outside of my area of expertise and like where the college should go next to grow. And I know that's caused a lot of tension at different points in town. I think it's not just the college there, right? There's a parish church there, there's an elementary school there, and there's a community of families that have like lived in their houses there's 100-year-old, 120-year-old houses in that area because it's been a family area for a long time. And as the college grows, more faculty are going to come in, and more employees are going to come in. And I know I have colleagues who have said one of the things that drew them to coming to Benedictine was being able to live in the historic neighborhood, being able to walk or ride their bike to work and things. So we like that too. And I think there's got to be a way in which we don't have to sacrifice the historic character, the family neighborhood area, and that we can find a way to preserve that. And I think one of those things would be we don't have to change everything into a duplex or a triplex. I mean, there's still, I don't know the business side of it, but 5 people, I mean, you can still build a house and rent it to people, right? Like this neighborhood's opposition isn't no new buildings ever, but you could build a house and rent it to 5 people. Now, I don't know how the finances on that works. Maybe it's not as advantageous, but before I got here, I was trying to get here, and I think someone was mentioning like I can't remember the term, but essentially a personal option. So we would allow, in this case, Craig to build something and operate it as a duplex, but it wouldn't actually be rezoned. And so then if he sold it, the next owner couldn't operate it as a duplex, right? So that the property wouldn't be rezoned. What was?
Amy, if you could clarify.
It would still be a duplex. It would be a non-conforming use. I don't think that probably makes sense for a path to go down.
Okay.
Because
that's why I heard it and I was left my
conditional use expires,
conditional use.
you still have a duplex. And so I don't know how that could be managed well. I would not think that's a path we would pursue.
Well, that was my question, is if you did a conditional use, who would want to buy that afterwards, right? Like
no one, if you have
holes in the wall and
right, that's what I mean. Okay, so, but you
Yeah,
guys already kind of wiped it off. When I was listening before I could get over here, I had heard conditional use as a thing. And this discussion made me think of that. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not opposed to people building things, and I know that change is difficult, and there's going to be tension, and there's going to have to be a give and take. I just think it's to make this many, to make these rezoning adjustments or changes is, it sounds like it, oh, it'd just be this one, right? And there's the one next to it. Or there's the two across on Fifth Street, so why not another one? And I think, well, why wouldn't Regan want to do this? And why wouldn't others want to do it? And all of a sudden, the neighborhood is drastically different. That's not even about the people who rent there, right? It's going to be a different feel when 60 people live on one side of the street instead of 25 to 30, and that they aren't invested in the neighborhood, they're just living there. And that's some of sorry, I'm going on too long now, right? But that's kind of summarizing the concerns I have and the ones when I've talked to my neighbors, the ones they have as well. So I'll sit down, but if you have any other questions, I can try to respond on behalf of the neighborhood.
Okay. All right, commissioners, do we have any other comments?
Well, I mean, this is not an easy call either way. I understand the points that have been given. I can give a counterpoint, I feel, either way to every issue and feel comfortable with that counterpoint. I think most of it is a matter of what is convenient and what is it that I want, not me. What is it each individual wants? I've been in enough major cities, lived in major cities. Part of the reason I live here, stay here, is that it is small and there's not a lot of traffic. But on the other hand, I've been in cities where you got thousands of people stacked on top of each other in Chicago, New York, and St. Louis, and everywhere else, and they seem to get along all right,
Well, as the college grows, these people are going to be here somewhere.
Yeah,
What are we going to do, make them drive an extra mile?
They could drive an extra mile. That's not that far.
I don't think we're doing any one person a favor by doing this. Looks to me like a normal growth of what's economically going on. As the college gets bigger, they need to,
Well, I also see it as an improvement to the neighborhood.
I do too.
Whatever's built there, it's an improvement to the neighborhood.
Commissioners, I think Commissioner Greenlee had a
No,
comment.
I was just going to say it's sort of the growing pains of the college. And we are always looking for better housing, affordable housing, and for renters, and also for home buyers. And I can see both sides, as Commissioner Wilcox mentioned as well. I think that maybe it's, and as Mayor pointed out, that I don't want to override a unanimous decision by the Planning Commission, but I also see the need for the additional housing. Also see that in order for, if you go anywhere in the area, you go to St. Joe, you go to Leavenworth, you go to Lawrence, you have a college community, you're going to have this type of situation, whether we like it or not. And they're not making any more land, and it's one of those situations where the college is expanding, and where there's land or lots available for housing, affordable housing, and for students to live, then we're going to be faced with this issue.
I just think if we don't do something like this, you can still build a building and just start renting it out. Have it as all one big building.
Well, it could be a situation where you could take, I don't know, if 2 tiny houses could go on that particular lot. I mean, it'd still be 2 homes. You could rent them, individual homes. What's going to be the difference?
I think my biggest issue here is that we have somewhere in our society determined that duplex are less of a home than a McMansion. You know what I mean? And I grew up, I lived 20 years in a duplex, and we live right next to a McMansion. And if you take that neighborhood, the character of that neighborhood from Division, let's just say down.
Unity.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Down to, let's just say, Commercial Street. It's a blend already. That's part of the character already. The fact that we have duplexes next to larger single-family homes. And with the cost of construction, the cost of land, the cost of all the things, this has to make sense for someone to invest. And as far as, children, I had, my youngest sister was struck and killed by a car in front of Van Dyke grocery store. So those things happen no matter what. And there was no big upheaval about stop signs and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just saying, the neighborhood speaks to this mix of construction types. And to have, you can go literally 100 feet from this property and find a duplex.
Then the college,
And I just don't understand what's detrimental about a duplex over, and, I just think we're trying to make it right for them, but we can't make it right for them. And I just feel like we're always trying to appease somebody to make something that they think that it is, that it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause, I mean, even the house that he built on Fifth Street is literally stone's throw away from the same property, from the property we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't see duplexes as a lesser form of, not everybody's ever going to want to own their own home. There are some that do, and we meet that need as well. But to say we can't have a duplex because it doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood is just not quite true to me.
Well, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Like the neighbor, you go down. So there's the one on the corner of 4th and Unity that is out of compliance. Is that what we call it? Non-conforming, right? So something that's non-conforming is not following the zoning properly, shouldn't become justification for like rezoning, right? It's out of compliance. It's not supposed to be like that. Right? I think, and so to use that and say, well, this new thing's going to look better than that is not, it's a pretty low bar, right? And then that argument was made, I think, earlier, right? This will be better than that. And so you just said, well, the duplex, right, doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. Well, that property we've been pointing to as a lesser than property so that we can justify this one. We go down 4th towards downtown. There is another duplex there. I believe Mike Rolling owns the property there, one of those, or next to it, I think. And it's a property that, this is no judgment on the owner or the inside, but it is not in good shape from the outside. Like, it would be one of those things that you would look at and say, someone needs to do some work on this. I need some help, right? I think, and this was my point earlier, but when we make properties with the intent of them to be rental properties, they're not getting the same investment as homeowners are doing in that neighborhood with historic homes there and things like that. And yes, the college is growing, but it's not like it's the college's responsibility. The college has in its own bylaws, if I understand, like a requirement to house 80% of students on campus. Like, they need to be taking that responsibility. I think they want to. I think the college does. Neighbors like who have been there for a long time, invested in that, it's not our job to house the students, right? And I think they can ride their bikes and drive if there's other better places to develop that won't require changing significantly the long-term development, like in the long term, changing the character of a neighborhood, right? And I hope, I really don't, I'm not talking about the people who live and like trying to speak negatively. I don't know. I hope you're not taking it that way, that I think people who live in duplexes are lesser than, but that the nature of rental properties, especially if we have a series of duplexes being rented with the plan of renting them to college students who are intentionally, they don't have lawnmowers and they're not going to do property maintenance, and they are not invested in the community like people who do want to rent long-term. The people who live across, like the people who rent long-term are invested in the community, but that's not what we're talking, like, I don't know, legally we can rent to anybody, right? Like Craig could rent, anybody can rent to anyone. But the argument is all around the college is growing, we need property around the college, so the implication is students will live there, and they're not investors in neighborhoods, right? So, I'll say.
Two things. One, I always become hesitant of bringing the college into play. Yes, probably logically it is a reason for the need for housing, okay? That's a good problem to have, number one, that we have somebody that, as opposed to Midwest who let people go,
Yeah.
you know, the college is growing, so we need housing. But they're not probably advocating for or against this deal. And there's I keep hearing this like conspiracy theory about the college is behind this and behind that, and they're trying to influence this and influence that. They got enough things to take care of, much less worried about where people parking in town, you know.
Right.
That's number one. Two, you bring up an issue that's even more, this is a whole different topic, but there are too many homes in this town that don't take care of them, that are gonna be nowhere near what any structure he puts up is gonna look like. I have confidence that what he builds is gonna be of quality, it's gonna look good, it's gonna feel good,
He's
you
gonna take
know,
care of it.
and it's not falling down and got piles of trash in the front yard and 9 cars and that don't run, you know, sitting in their backyard. So, you know, that's a whole different topic, but
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with what is going to be built there, or if it were to be built, what it would look like, if it's gonna be taken care of, if it's structurally sound, those types of things. We got some crap in this town that, you know, I'd like to start getting the checklist and say, let's get a bulldozer out a little more often, but anyway,
Right.
so, so it's gonna be a tough call, either way. I'm gonna feel good, I'm not gonna feel good at the same time.
I agree with you. I think for me, the one thing, the two things that are of concern and would cause me pause, one is the spot zoning legality issue. That is of concern. I actually have three. The second one, which I should have stated before the spot zoning issue, is that the Planning Commission unanimously decided that this is not a good thing. So that's another reason. Third, the nonconforming is an issue for me. It doesn't mean, Mr. Ostertag, that I don't agree that you are a wonderful builder, that you do have quality products. We obviously need housing. I do agree with that. We obviously need our city to grow economically. Housing is a critical issue of that. So please understand that when I say that I am very concerned and that I personally do not want to overturn what the Planning Commission has put forward, it does not mean that I do not value you as a builder and the quality. It's just that the three things that concern me, one, the unanimous vote with the Planning Commission, two, the issue around the spot zoning and that legality, and three, the nonconforming portion.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, can you explain to me more, what do you mean by the non-conforming issue?
Where we say the nonconforming use of the north in R1 zoning.
I think that's a separate
Is it?
structure they're talking about.
Oh, okay,
That
I
is
see.
operating as a duplex in an R1 zoning. Is that, am I correct about that? The duplex, the non-conforming
Non-conforming.
duplex, that's a separate property.
Oh, okay, it's
Yeah,
completely
it's
separate.
just
Okay.
nearby.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We can't issue somebody a non-conforming permit, can we?
You're off in the weeds.
Right, because I understood that a non-conforming designation was a historical thing from way back.
Well, people use the term grandfathered, and
Yeah.
typically that's a poor term to use.
Right.
It probably was never designed as a multifamily property. It just evolved into a multifamily, and there's tons of them. It's not the only one. The trouble with most codes, they don't go backward, go forward from the point they were adopted. Zoning regulations probably were, this group we're on probably was adopted in the 70s and written then. That was, probably had been well in underuse as a multifamily.
Well, due to the fact that college is needing all this housing, it looks to me like that the one next to it actually might be a building where somebody, it's getting toward the end of its life, it looks like, the one on the corner. But like he says, I think somebody very well might want to tear that down and put a multi-living unit in there. I don't see that wouldn't be the normal progression of things that's happening.
And this is, yeah.
I think
that's
you
my
think
point.
that's a bad thing, but I can see where it's a good thing that we're doing that.
Well, it may be good for those who develop it, right, and those
I
who
think it's good
live
for the
there, right?
college and the
But-
people
Good for
that
the
live there.
community, good for the community.
And I mean, I guess, in what sense would it be good for the people living across the street, all 5 homeowners living across, like, how's it good
Well, I was
for
just
them?
thinking, where I live right there, if I count 6 houses around there, 4 of them are occupied by college students right now. And I don't think it hasn't hurt now one guy, he complains about different stuff, but I just don't have a problem with it.
Hey,
Yeah,
Justin,
okay.
what's the
Out of the 6
percentage?
houses right there in that community.
What's the percentage of homes or that people live here are rented versus the number of ones that are owned? Hasn't the number?
Off the top of my head, I would say 60-40, 60 owned, 40 rented. And I don't know if that's a percentage of, you'll see that if you look at like, if you just Googled like Atchison, Kansas city data or something, that it's all sourced from census data. And I would say that census data is notoriously, the smaller the community that you go to, or the smaller the jurisdiction that you're looking at, the worse that data gets. So if you're looking at Washington DC, their data is awesome.
So,
But if you're
in
looking
what
at,
way? Which owned?
the
rented?
smaller it is, the less accurate it is because the margin of
Oh,
error, because it's all based on what's called the American Community Survey, which is not actually full-blown. Anyway, the last number that I've seen is around 60-40, which is not uncommon for
Own
what I would
rent or
call
rent owned?
Is
more owners than renters. It's about 60-40.
Can we blow that map up right there, like on this property? And we can point to the lots, I can tell you, in this neighborhood, right? So we're looking. Okay, so we're looking, there's the elementary school, right? So we're talking 3rd Street, 4th Street, okay? So strip of lot right there, that's the one we're talking about rezoning. The one that is forming, renter, think of renter and a homeowner, there. Renter here, homeowner. So we're talking 5, 6 homeowners on this side. Right there, that's 7. Can't speak. Here. So I'm counting 9 homeowners, 6 renters. This side of the street that faces that property, all these are owned by. So.
Well, that 9 to 6 is about the ratio, it's pretty common.
I'm just telling you what the
Yeah.
census data is.
Do you
That's
have any
citywide, yeah, that's 11,000 people.
Do you have any idea how that's trending? Is it trending more towards renters?
Oh,
I mean,
that.
huh? I don't know if,
I have
that's what I'm
never-
saying, if we know that.
You know, I see that stuff over time. I have never, and I do look at that data a lot because I've written grants and submit applications for that kind of thing, so I do see that census data fairly often. I've never come away with the impression that the percentage of renters in Atchison is growing.
Well, I don't have any statistical information, but I would assume that as the college grew, the number of renters grew as more kids had to go off campus.
Yeah.
Because almost everybody lived on campus, and then as they didn't have housing for them, they had to go somewhere.
That is
So
true.
that number of renters went up as a result of the college.
That is true, but also as they build residence halls, that number is less consistent than you might think. So even as early as 60 days ago, I would have seen a report from the college of the number of off-campus students that they have, and I can provide that if it's helpful to the conversation. Not, but so one year it might be 600 and then 680, and then they build a residence hall and it drops down to 380, and then it builds for a few years and then it contracts. They're, what I've heard about them is that they have sort of metrics for when they hit a certain percentage of off-campus, then they want to build because it's part of one of their core missions is to be a residential.
But if they build for 120, and the enrollment goes up 120,
Yeah.
as it has each of the last 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
they've negated the dorm that they've added.
Or the college wants to be a residential college, that particular area would be the ideal place for the college to
To tie a bow on the original question, 60/40 is very consistent with what I would call our cohort cities, who you could toss in there would be Ottawa or Baldwin City or Coffeyville or Chanute or Great Bend or whoever. It's
Sorry, the last thing I'll say, and I promise that's the last thing. I think I've said that 3 times. I'm sorry. To your point, you mentioned of your concerns of the unanimous commission meeting. Right? I think just my concern, and I think it speaks for others of, to have a unanimous decision from the commission meeting just be overturned, I think it would send a bad message to the town. I think it was our neighborhood, the people I've been working with and trying to help organize, saw the other process as before when we did this back in the fall with the other property, that the property had broken ground before the commission had even voted on whether to rezone it. And I know people in my neighborhood saying, well, what's the point? The city's already decided, right? This process doesn't matter because he's already breaking ground. Now I know when I came to the meeting, I heard something different, but their impression is that letter doesn't matter, right? That letter doesn't matter because the city's already decided, right? And now here we would have a commission the planning commission voting unanimously one way, and for then the city commission to upend that, I think undermines confidence, you might say, in that this for people in the town, that these processes are what they look like, right? Or what people want them to be. Okay, and I think that should be taken into consideration, right? What's the message of a unanimous decision then just getting overturned, right? But that's all. I'll sit down.
Okay.
I just mentioned that the planning commission is, kind of volunteers, and this board here is elected. There's a big difference.
Commissioners, do we feel ready to move forward?
I'd like to hear from the attorney for sure. I really would. I think tabulating it, I think that's.
I'd make a motion to table this.
Okay.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we table the rezoning issue regarding 920 North 4th Street. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries, and this item number 4 is tabled.
That gives us an opportunity to look at the area, do some assessment.
Okay. All right, very good. Next, item number 5, Deese and Eunice Duttweiler subdivision final plant approval, presented by Phil Burke.
Well, the good news is this shouldn't take us long.
We can challenge you on that.
Well, there's really no vote required. There's no public dedication of land, no streets dedicated. Basically, the Duttweiler's estate was one home, some outbuildings, and an acreage to the south of it. The heirs advised Mr. Budenbaum, who's the estate lawyer, to divide them to get a greater potential. So what we have is a division of that property. The house and the outbuildings is a 2-acre tract, and then the south part is basically a vacant land type tract. The city does have an easement for a water line that runs through that property. The easement has been found, and we've got copies of it. Also given Mr. Duttweiler a copy of the water line location map.
Does that water easement lots?
It seems to.
Okay.
Looks like it.
Does that border Jackson Park, the house part?
No, Steve Service borders.
Okay, I thought that was part of
That was another Duttweiler property that got sold off.
it. I see.
This is 1714. That's where the house and the 7. It is not in a sanitary sewer location, but it does have access to electricity. It would have to be on a septic system if somebody was to put something on that acreage, or they could further subdivide it if they chose to. So, I'm looking for their signature. Move it on back to Mr. Budenbaum and get it registered with the county so they can sell it.
Okay. Any questions, any further questions? Any concerns? Okay, are we ready to move forward? I will entertain a motion to approve the Deese and Eunice Detweiler subdivision plat as presented and authorize the signatures of the mayor and the city clerk.
I'll move that.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, item number 6, resolution number 3384, lease purchase jet vac truck, presented by Amy Fitch, city manager.
All right, thank you. And if we have any specific or technical questions, I'll rely on Clinton. But back in February of 2023, the City Commission approved the purchase of a jet vac truck. The approved amount was $487,616.61. We are just getting that, so the equipment provider, the bid was approved for key equipment. So we are now near delivery and went out for bid for the financing piece of this, which was through lease purchase, which is common for our larger purchases that are not really feasible to cut in one budget year. We got 8 bids returned, and you can see the chart of those in your packet on page 28 or on the screen. First State Bank and Trust was the low bid at 4.15%. The term we asked for was 5 years with 1 annual payment. The payments that come in with the First State Bank and Trust bid are within the budgeted amount of the annual payments. Those are in our budget for $109,533. Their payment would calculate to $108,397. Payments would begin January of 2025.
That figures out to about $2,000 a week.
I would have to trust you on that.
My math's a little weak, but I think that's pretty close. That's a pretty frightening number.
Well, the purchase was already approved, so we're really talking today about the financing
Right.
piece of that.
I went out and looked at the truck. I think it's something we're questioning the need of it.
You saw the one I think maybe we
I
got in
looked at both of them
2011.
for everybody's benefit. The only thing, it's already a done deal evidently, but let's see, 122,000 of this is just the truck itself. There's other options I think we should have looked at on that thing, in my opinion. We could put that on the same truck we've got or put it on a different truck. I think there's some justification for actually keeping the old trucks because this is such an important piece of equipment. I don't know what the city's position is. I don't know, but I mean.
If you have something that, I'll defer to you on that.
So we still have the existing piece of equipment, it's a 2011. There's nothing set in stone with that. I think, going back in time to February, I probably wrote in the memo to the commission that the trade-in value is not very attractive. I had found an example of the exact same truck on an auction site. I don't remember the exact number now, but it was either 100,000 or 150. I can't remember. That was the suggested price. It wasn't the actual final auction number. It's hard to say what it actually would bring. The recommendation at that time was that our ERP benefit from making 100,000 or reducing that cost overall, by 100,000 more so than keeping it as a backup. My recommendation now would be for certain to keep it as a backup for a few months at least, as sometimes new trucks have bolts that didn't get tightened and causes cascading things to go wrong. And so to make sure that we have the equipment on hand if we need it once we get past that, 3 or 4 months.
I found one on a sale that was like 125,000, what it sold for. Real similar truck outfit that would pump the water and vacuum it up both, which is important in that case. It's not just a vacuum truck.
And I'm kind of going back to the 2,000 a week. I'm not sure what calculation that was, but it would be, for example, the current truck we have is 13 years, so 13 times 52 weeks, whatever that number is, and then you divide that by that number, I think it would probably be less than 2,000.
It
The
is.
course of its lifetime.
Yeah.
But it's
I was
about
just
three-
taking
about
the
300
5 years that we're gonna make payments.
About $300 a day. I think I figured that right.
But that's probably for the 5-year period, 13-year period.
Good point. That's exactly
No,
right.
300. Cover the two.
I would also say that the alternative to that
Yeah.
might be to rent those services,
Hmm.
which, to rent out a service like that.
That was my next
Which-
question.
We've done that before. Couldn't tell you what the going rate today would be. But are they available? How big is the emergency that we're having right now?
Right.
Something running into the street that we don't want to have running down the street. We have there's a lot of factors that go into why we
Well,
want to have that.
And I agree. I don't know, and one of my questions, and this is just so I feel better about it, I guess, as far as utilization, is this, how often is this thing used, say, in a 90-day period? Is it used 10 times, 3 times?
I would say it's probably used at least once a week in some capacity.
Once a week, okay.
In the winter, probably maybe more than that, because it's not just for jetting and vac. I mean, they can do what we call hydro excavation with it, digging in a sensitive area where there's a lot of utilities. They use that to
Oh, sure.
do that.
You know what he means by that?
Mhm.
Hydro excavation. Do you guys
Yeah,
know what he
you-
means by that? Like if they get near a underground
Like a
line of
gas
some
main.
kind with all this new underground rainbow stuff coming in especially. When you get near one of those lines, you can take this truck and you can spray water down and it'll get the dirt away from the
Dissolves the
line
dirt.
so you don't hit this line. That was a really impressive part of that to me, that truck was usable for that. I mean, I just thought this is just crazy spending this kind of money for this truck. But
We
they-
try to make it as versatile as possible. I don't know that anybody on the crew liked doing this, but a couple of years ago, when the ash borers came through and wiped out our commercial street ash trees, well, the stumps had pretty much taken up those tree wells. We used that jet vac truck to get those stumps excavated out of there, because trying to do it with a backhoe with no space was problematic. So we try to get creative and
I just have really one more question, and then it's kind of a suggestion, but probably there's reasons why we don't do it. Does the pump and jet sprayer, thing like that, work on its own motor, or does it work off the motor of the truck? Is there, you know my question, what I'm trying to.
does it work off the PTO of the truck, or does it have
Exactly,
its own
exactly.
motor?
Or does it have,
That does. I just looked at it.
Okay.
It does. But the option, what I found on the internet on equipment dealers, is you can get it either way. So you could buy the same system, like a trailer.
Right.
yeah, that was my next
Then
question.
you could just switch the truck out, which would have lowered this $122,000 if you put it on a trailer. But I don't know how usable that is. I don't know.
Do we already have the truck?
Yes.
No. We had a truck, but we don't, this is
Do
going
we have the
on.
new one?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, this is all moot.
So
It is.
right now,
Yeah.
it's already been approved, bought. You're deciding on which, approving us
You're not
to,
here
which
to explain to
financing
us how
package.
every piece of equipment you own works.
So we're wasting everybody's time.
But I would say this.
If you want to go out and look at it and have somebody explain it to you, go out there and look at it.
It's really cool.
But I would say this, the first I heard of this was Thursday. And I'd kind of like to know if we're going to find any more Easter
Well, they-
eggs that cost $500,000.
Hold on.
Come
If
up
I
on
could, if
Thursday.
I could interject.
Okay.
This is not an Easter egg. This was approved with the budget
I know.
last year. You were not on the commission at
Right.
that time, but 5 elected commissioners approved that. It is split in our equipment replacement plan and supported by both our water division and our wastewater division. I think that's important, that that piece of equipment is actually functioning and supporting 2 very vital operations
too.
that are our core service.
So
So
13
I-
years from now, you can act on it.
Yes, I don't want to, I just don't want to leave that comment about an Easter egg, because it's not. It's in the
Well, I mean, I
minutes.
didn't
It's,
hear anything about it.
well,
until
you weren't on
Thursday.
the commission, so you must not have watched the meeting or read the minutes, but in
Okay, but I just
February,
think how many more things have we got committed that way that we don't know about?
that we
Anything
don't
else?
have yet, I'd have to go look,
I'd
but
kinda like to
they're
know
all in
before-
the, we can look at the budget, so
Yeah.
a $500,000 piece of equipment didn't sneak up on us in February of 2024 to land on your doorstep.
Our main task tonight has nothing to do with.
Is to
finding-
award
finding-
the
Who are
financing.
we gonna finance?
Yes.
That's really why we're here.
Yes, because
So
the
at
the
the rest of
purchase has
everything
been
else is kind
approved.
of
Everything else is approved and
elevated.
documented and, yeah.
Okay.
So at this moment, do we have any other questions regarding the actual loan? If not,
I do.
you
Are we,
Yes, sir.
are we legally committed to take the lowest bid?
No, I don't believe so, and I'll let
I mean, there's only a $700 difference between
the two low bids.
and the one is local, and there's a $700 difference.
I agree
Bob,
with
do
you.
you
Yes.
have? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And that's within a reasonable, there's quite a jump between the first two to the next one, and
Yeah.
they go up from there, but,
If we were in the thousands, I wouldn't say that, but $700,
I tend to agree with Commissioner and Vice Mayor Wilcox. I would actually prefer to go with the local.
okay,
Yeah, I think we're on that. Are you
Certainly.
looking for? are we-
Anyone have a question? Okay, so with that, do we have a motion to move forward with the Exchange Bank and Trust?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we will move forward with the Exchange Bank and Trust bid for the loan. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
is this a roll?
Motion,
roll call?
is it a roll call vote? I'm so sorry.
it is, but
Okay,
before
Tina.
you take your vote, I just
Yes.
want to add, we will make the necessary changes in the resolution.
Oh,
Because
okay.
it does identify the financial institution and the rate, so we will make those
Okay.
updates
Oh, okay,
to
so do
finalize
we
that.
need to then hold off on the roll
No, I
call?
don't think
or
so.
can we
No,
go?
that should
Okay.
be fine. I just wanted to make that, just for the record, that we'll get that updated.
Okay, all right. Tina?
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Commissioner Slattery,
No.
Mayor Young,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilcox.
Yes.
Commissioner Greenland.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and now we will move on with item number 7, our executive session to discuss personnel matters on non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319, Section B, subsection 1. And we will go in, let's see, how much time do we need? Okay, all right, so we will go in at 5:46 and come out at 5:56. Okay.
Do we need to? We need to vote.
Oh.
Whoever puts the full address on.
If you did it right, it'd be entertaining, you know.
That's what I can do, right? Oh, I follow it.
So an officer says that he's got a service.
Not necessarily. I don't think she puts all that in
I
there.
see a lot of 10-6s and 10-7s on there.
Well, that's her. I'm gonna be 10-7.
If I'm eating, I'm gonna say, I'll be 10-7 for, doesn't say. No, it doesn't say. That was me in commission. That was 3 hours ago. Then it's like,
Have it set as.
well, going as a.
You're good, they're good. We gotta start Facebook back.
Okay. Yes. We good? Okay. All right. We are back in session and there were no actions taken in executive session. At this time, we will have communications presented by City Manager Amy Finch.
All right. In your communications section of your agenda packet, you have your February 2024 financials and a host of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes from Atchison Housing Authority from their board meeting minutes on December 19th and January 16th. We have 2 sets of minutes from the Atchison Public Library board meetings on November 27th and January 29th, and 1 set of minutes from Park and Forestry board meeting on February 12th.
All right. Any questions for communications? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Informational items presented by Clinton McNamee.
All right, I have a few updates on some different funding, but the one listed here is that the city received a Kansas Airport Improvement Program grant through KDOT for 50% of our local match on the runway project. So the runway project's about 9.6 million as it stands now. Local match is about 960,000. It's not quite evenly that. So our KDOT grant for half of that local match is $479,522. Just kind of an interesting thing. We still have some balance from some private donations, and I have not added that up in the last 6 months, but I'm just going to speculate that it's at least 300,000 in there. Plus this results in the city's cost as the project stands right now is about 180,000, which is a little less than 2% of the total project cost. That's pretty remarkable. Having said all that, we also got news recently that a bill was signed into law recently, which included a $3 million congressionally directed spending, formerly known as an earmark, for the runway project. And that would, I alluded to it a meeting or two ago when we talked about the gas pipeline. The additional funding would allow us, if we still haven't had these conversations in detail with the FAA yet, but that would allow us to reroute that gas line around the runway instead of going under it. But it would be at a higher cost, and preliminary estimates from a year ago would suggest that it would add about $1.5 million to the project, which is well under the earmark amount. However, it would be just like an FAA grant. We'd be responsible for 10%. So that 180,000 I was talking about, when all said and done to the city, would add another 150,000-ish to that. And so we're looking at, 3 to 3.5% of the total project cost would be this, which normally it's 10% local match, what someone's putting in towards one of these projects. So it's just one way to put it in perspective. Still less than 5% on something generally it's 10%. That's all good news for the airport project. There's nothing to do with that at this point. It was just informational. But speaking of the CDS request, last year Well, I should back up and say that that was a group effort with, that request was submitted to both LaTurner, Jake LaTurner, and Jerry Moran. And so they worked on that and got that going for us. On the one from last year was through Senator Moran, and we were able to, I say we, it was actually the Corps of Engineers got funding, but it's for City of Atchison CSO projects. So we've got the long-term control plan, we've got the consent agreement with KDHE. Takes us out to 2040, where we're supposed to hit these marks on different projects. You know, we gotta get our engineering report by this date, design by this date, a construction by this date. They've got us, you know, out to 2040. The CDS request last year was 500,000, requires 25% from us. Total 667,000 for design. That's what we chose to do with it, was design the next 2 or 3 projects. It's just beginning phases now. But then this year we got an additional 4.5 million funded to the Corps for our projects. And so with our 25% would be 1.5 million. That would give us $6 million to build the projects that they're starting to design now. Hopefully, these are projects that we get done in the next few years versus spread out over 10 or 15. So it's a pretty big deal. It's very much in the preliminary stages, so I don't have a lot of answers as to how that's going to look. Are they going to be done simultaneously? I don't know that, but several million that the city doesn't need to figure out how to generate.
Good.
Comment and question. First of all, congratulations on the grant to you and whomever were involved in getting that funding for the airport. I'm a little confused, though. I thought the last meeting we were sort of under the gun to make a decision because there was a timeline on getting that started.
Yep.
And now that on hold to determine if we're going to go around it
So,
with the additional grants.
right. So in order for Magellan's the pipeline. In order for them to start ordering materials and proceed with their design things, and we needed to get that going. However, now I feel fairly confident we're going to have a path forward to go around the runway. And so I don't have this confirmed with Magellan, but the theory here, well, let me back up again. So even with that plan, where we were rushing to try to get something going, their projected timeline for completion, had everything lined up, still would have caused a delay for IDECR, who's the main runway contractor, in July. And with this news, we're hoping that the existing line can stay live while IDECR is doing their work.
Puts the runway in.
While Magellan's putting in the new line, and then they're completely separate. One's not going to be on top of the other one in that case. And so that's where the sense of urgency is relaxed now.
So both the pipeline and the runway could be under construction simultaneously,
Right.
whereas the pipeline had to go before the runway when it was done.
Yes. It could even go after, as long as FAA is okay with how that sequencing goes with there's a lot of things to be determined, because you have to determine a scope of work for each grant. There's like 3 grants right now that are in play, and you got to take all the unit costs out of the thing and say, okay, we got $1 million grant. We need to find $1 million worth of work in this contract, put it in that grant. This grant's for $6 million. We got to find $6 million and put it in that one. So now we're getting additional grant funding, and some of that's already been accounted for these other grants. So there's some fancy things that need to happen to get it partitioned correctly. And so I struggle to say things in absolutes right now because there's just a lot of details to iron out. This is very new news, but I think it's going to be good news all around, long run. So I think this would improve the timeline. I don't know that it changes the timeline for IDECR, what they've communicated, but if they ended up getting slowed down because of the pipeline work and plant Plan A, I'll call it, that would have affected the timeline of the overall project. But if the premise of what we're thinking here is that existing line can stay live while the grading happens and everything happens, it shouldn't have any conflicts with the main project. So, fingers crossed. Again, we haven't gotten that far.
Second question is, when they reroute it, do we own all the land routed to? We can grant the easement?
Yes. It'll run parallel with the rural water district lines, which will kind of wrap, we're trying to hug as close to the property lines. So there will be little as possible of future issues. We wouldn't build any vertical structures where that goes anyway, because it's too close to the runway. So as long as there's a runway there, it shouldn't be a problem.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay. All right. Thank you, Clinton, and thank you so much and congratulations. All right. Next, we will have governing body comments. Commissioner Greenlee.
Just echo the comments of Vice Mayor Wilcox. Congratulations getting the way situated and the grants approved for the funding of that. Well done.
Excellent. Vice Mayor?
Everybody enjoyed St. Patrick's Day. The weather was nice. Hope there were no problems. No problem.
No runaway letter.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right, Commissioner Slattery.
I just had one thing that, did we talk about this? I can't remember today, that statue that Murphy mentioned. Did the insurance company that the person hit that, did they pay for that?
The statue of Deefy.
Who paid for fixing the statue that?
Of Deefy Bowler.
Do we have to pay that, or did somebody hit it and their insurance pays it, or what? Somebody want to know what was.
I don't see the. Been so long. I'm sure that the city of Atchison.
Okay.
Remember. Like I said, I don't. Confirmations.
I just wondered if.
I think we can, I can look at that, or Reagan can, this week and get an answer back to you.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it was hundreds of dollars. The entire, because the bench was destroyed, the pedestal. So I think we probably put a higher into the thousands.
Okay. Go ahead, Murphy.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Murphy?
I really don't have anything.
Okay.
Just a nice St. Patrick's Day parade.
Okay. Good. And I don't really have that much except congratulations, Clinton, and to your staff. Really appreciate your hard work. And having been on the other side of that for many years when I was in DC, I know how difficult that can be. So really congratulations. And at this juncture, unless anyone has anything else, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Done.
All right. Is there a second?
Second it.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. To a workshop, yes.
I was gonna say, don't run out, don't leave.
Sorry, sorry, guys. Okay, we are adjourned to a workshop.
Downshifts, Slattery.
Okay. I was ready to escape.
All right, I'll jump in.
Okay.